Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And by Wyndham Garden Lafayette.
From the French Press in downtown Lafayette, we're out to lunch with Christiaan Mader, publisher and editor of The Current. It's business, Acadiana style.
Welcome to Out to Lunch. I'm Christiaan Mader. In Acadiana, business is a tradition, and tradition is a business, often the family business. There's a long heritage of musical families around here. There are dynasties of fiddlers and accordion players, handing down the tools and tricks of the family trade to generation after generation. It's one of our greatest exports. Lafayette practically pumps out ranks of acclaimed Zydeco and Cajun musicians, and most of them are carrying on something they learned from their parents and their parents' parents. Throw a rock in any direction, you'll probably hit a Grammy nominee. Throw another, you might hit her mom. My guests today are both internationally celebrated musicians from famous Cajun families. Virginia-born Anne Savoy married into the Savoy family of Eunice and has toured internationally with her band, the Magnolia Sisters, which explores the feminine side of the Cajun tradition. They're not actually her sisters. Anne is a writer and will soon publish the second volume of her archival work, Cajun Music, A Reflection of a People. Anne, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thanks a lot. Great to be here.
My next guest, Louis Michot, grew up in a big, sprawling Cajun music family. Since 1999, he's toured internationally with Lost Bayou Ramblers, a band he started with his brother Andre 20 years ago. Lost Bayou won a Grammy for their 2017 record, Kalenda, and recently Louis launched Nouveau Electric Records, a label that puts out experimental artists rooted in Louisiana French musical traditions. Louis, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thanks, Christiaan.
So, Anne, you're not just known for touring with the Magnolia Sisters. You've also done this a lot with your family band, the Savoy family band. And so I was thinking a lot about what it must be like to tour with your family, like watch your kids grow up that way. I mean, what was that like?
Well, it's pretty funny because they all were tending toward playing our musical instruments that were scattered all over the house and would say, "Don't you dare touch that." And so they all would, when we weren't around, they'd grab the instruments and start playing them secretly, But so we waited for them to grow up, and then it became a band. We played with Michael Doucet, though, first for a long time in the Savoy Doucet Cajun band. We toured all over with him. And so the family band, it's just been amazing. You look around, we all know the same songs. You've got the same inner knowledge of each other, right? And you look around, it's pretty incredible seeing your kids become better musicians than you are right in front of your face. It's like, darn. No, it's awesome. It's really, really fun. They're all very moody Cajuns, though, I must say. I'm the only easy to get along with person in the band.
Is that a thing to be like a moody Cajun? I mean, I grew up around...
It's a thing.
It's a thing. In fact, we used to call the Savoy Doucet band the Moody Cajun band because it was me with them. Yeah. It was like...
So who all's in the band, actually? I mean, I know your two of your sons, Joel and Wilson, and then Mark, your husband. Is that the whole thing?
Yeah, it's Joel and Wilson Savoy, Mark and Ann Savoy, and sometimes our daughter Sarah Savoy, and sometimes even Gabrielle, our youngest daughter. She's done a couple of tours with us, not much, playing guitar. Yeah, so it's all Savoys, definitely.
Yeah. So you move here from Virginia, right? And as you said, like you encounter a bunch of moody Cajuns. You marry into a family of moody Cajuns. I mean, what was that transition for you like? And how did you, come to really get engaged in the area?
Well, I came here as a complete French fanatic because I was a French major and I've lived in Paris and things. And I just adored the way the people here spoke French. And the music really destroyed my heart the minute I heard it. I just fell in love with it. I met, I think it was the Balfas and Mark Savoy and all were up at Wolf Trap. And I met him and I just was blown away. And I couldn't do anything but come here. I thought, here's the French culture. Here's this amazing music. And the place is pretty cool, too. I mean, the place is not, when I first saw Louisiana, I didn't understand its beauty particularly. I thought, I didn't get it, but it's all now madly in love with the way it looks. It's so, this flatness and this kind of lushness of it. And so, I don't know, I'm a smitten convert to this place for 40-some years, actually. I've been here longer than Virginia already.
Wow. Louis, I'd love to start with the label. So there's a bit of a contradiction, it seems to me, in terms, right? You call it a label that puts out something that's rooted in tradition, but it's experimental. How does that work?
Well, there's so much music being made around Acadiana, and some of it does fit into the traditional realm, and some of it could, and some of it doesn't. And I guess it maybe comes from what my own musical path has taken me, where it's I was both at once, like as a teenager, playing in a traditional family band and playing like in experimental groups. And then I never meant to be a professional musician, by the way. But
What did you mean to be?
I don't know.
A doctor.
Actually, I wanted to, a doctor.
Yeah.
I wanted to try and grow food, like be like an organic farmer or something, but I'm not very good at it. Mm-hmm. And it's probably hard to make money with that. And I just was playing music on the streets and stuff all over the place and making money and supporting myself, and then it just turned into touring, and it just kept growing. But after becoming, and I was playing, like I had both kind of musics going on at the same time, but Lost Bayou Ramblers became the main thing pretty quick, and then as time go on, we became more experimental as a band. And, of course, people ask the question, well, are y'all still traditional? Yeah, we're still traditional. We play Cajun French music. We have a triangle and an accordion and a fiddle, and it's in French. It's Cajun music, but is it, does the experimentalness alter its traditionality or whatever? And, my thing is that Cajun musicians and all musicians of all regards have always been experimental. And it's in being experimental that you find new sounds and that new crazes are created. I mean, you can't just you don't just have one music that just glides throughout history. It's like, who does something new and next? And that's where new trends come from and such. And so with Nouveau Electric, it's really to kind of more give a voice to these more extreme artists and creations that are happening that don't even have a chance of fitting in the tradition part, because, and it's about both. There's so much good traditional music that still needs to be recorded. There's so much music that is hard to translate from the stage to a recording. So that's one of my goals, is to try to do that with certain very traditional artists. But then at the same time, there's so much music being made that doesn't have a voice or a platform because it doesn't fit into any one mold or genre. And so just trying to give a voice to different types of music, and a lot of my own stuff that I've worked on over the years that I want to put out.
So, I mean, Ann, I know that, obviously working within the family tradition, right, has been a thing for you, but you've played around in a lot of different styles. I mean, Sleepless Nights is kind of more jazz standards kind of things, right?
Yeah.
I know you did some recordings like Linda Ronstadt, right?
Yeah, we made a duet record.
Yeah. I mean, how have you found, marketing yourself as a musician, kind of one foot in the traditional camp and, maybe 1 foot outside of it? I mean, do you find that that's a difficult thing to do, or that people generally just get, here's Ann Savoy, I know what she's about?
I think they know that I'm all of these people,
Yeah.
because I've kind of made that clear in my life. I'm many people and many voices. I'm even making a new solo record about that. It's a little bit of everything there is, that I like to do. Music is something that's, I don't know, it just fascinates me, every genre of it, and so I just want to put my voice to it and say, this is the way I hear this song, and find great songs and expose people to them. And I don't really have anybody telling me a limit. You can only play traditional Cajun music or anything, I've always just been a person who did whatever I wanted. Kind of, luckily I've been able to do that,
I got to ask more about the recordings you did with Linda Ronstadt, because I kind of have a crush on her, I'm sure. I do. And saying,
only you.
Only you. only me. I mean, what was that? Tell us more about that recording, like the project and what it was.
It sort of started with this project I did called Evangeline Maid, which was rock stars playing with traditional Cajun artists.
Yeah.
And so I tried to find every rock star I personally knew, which I didn't know that many people, the Richard Thompson and, I don't know, Linda and different. And they all said, yeah, we'd love to do it. Because when we travel, I'm sure, Louis, you find that too, that you meet all kinds of rock stars and they love Cajun music and, they want to do it. And so I had a lot of people. Keith Richards actually was going to do it. And I won't go into all that, but that's another story. But So Linda Ronstadt, we liked our cuts a lot. We got a lot of good reviews for the cuts on Evangeline Maid. So a record producer asked us if we wanted to make a record for Vanguard. I was working for Vanguard as a record producer at that time.
Okay.
And I liked our cuts. So Linda wanted to do it. And all I do when I go to her house is would hang out and sing. I mean, we sing all the time. I visit her a lot in Arizona and in San Francisco. And we just hang out around her fire and sing and play guitars. And we both love all the same music. And it was incredible. You find a vocalist like that to sing with once in a millennium. I mean, that was so sad when she couldn't sing anymore. We were working on our second record, actually. And that's why I did a solo record, because we developed a lot of material. And I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and make a record. Rhiannon Giddens sings on a couple of the songs, but it's really that same kind of thing as the Linda Ronstadt record. But she's an amazing person. She's a wild woman. She's hilarious. We have the same artistic visions, and we go to museums and like to eat good food. And what else can I say? She tells great stories.
Yeah. What happened with Keith?
With Keith, okay, well, this is pretty pitiful. They would not buy him a first-class ticket to come for the session.
Oh, no.
Dang it. I was like, what? Anyway, so that's what happened. He was all ready. We had it all set up. It was all... And Vanguard was like, oh, no, we're not buying first-class tickets.
Well, it's just surprising because you would just think that Keith... I mean, I get it, but I'm also sort of like, he's got so much money, he could buy a first-class ticket if it meant that much to him.
I was going to say, I thought it was maybe Peter Tosh had taken over his private island and he was too busy trying to get them all.
Could have been. He'd recorded with Michael Doucet on something, I can't remember, and he loved Michael, so I was going to get Michael and Keith to do a Creole song. I thought that would be amazing, a Canray song. And it was all set, and the ticket blew it. Really? I never go anywhere but first class.
Yeah. I've never done it myself. That's all right.
A joke, by the way.
Oh.
Traditional music does not buy you first-class plane tickets.
Yeah. I mean, Louis, is that what you've found? Not that traditional music doesn't buy you first-class tickets, but that, rock stars love Cajun music? I mean, has this been an entry to the glitzy life for you?
I mean, it happens. I mean, there's, I think any artist that's really putting themselves into their music and people see it and they get it, well, it kind of leads them to want to know more about it or share their experience with it. And we've been playing with Spider Stacy from the Pogues a lot lately, and he mentioned that, he and Joe Strummer of The Clash were the lead singers for the Pogues while Shane MacGowan was out with the Popes, and he was mentioning that that Joe Strummer actually turned them on to Cajun music, and they wrote a song about Amédée Ardoin French with the Pogues.
They did? What?
Yeah, and it's, it's just full circle. It's like, oh, Joe Strummer, and Joe Strummer's like such a legend, I mean, it just goes on. And just being in music, some of them maybe never even knew about Cajun music, but then they do, and then you start playing together and you start finding common thread. Gordon Gano at the Violent Femmes, he ended up at one of our shows in New Orleans, and we started playing for a few years after that, but then turned out he's a Gano, which used to be spelled E-A-U. But now it's, Gano. And, it's just, it always comes full circle somehow.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Christiaan Mader. I'm talking with musicians Louis Michot and Anne Savoie. We'll be right back after a brief break. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Christiaan Mader. Talking with musicians Louis Michot and Anne Savoie. I wrote something a while back about the swamp pop relationship with the English, right? How much they loved it. And what was really fascinating to me was that they generally just thought of Louisiana music, as Louisiana music. And when we talked I got to interview Elvis Costello, or not Elvis Costello, I'm sorry. This is killing me now. Nick Lowe. I interviewed Nick Lowe, and Nick talked a little bit about getting this record and hearing Johnny Allen, and they called it all Cajun music, right? And so it has me curious, sort of you guys find that when you travel and you meet folks, famous or otherwise, I mean, are you up against a perception of what Cajun music ought to be, and does that change how you have to perform to them? Come in and it's like, well, this is what I think Cajun music is, so you got to do it this way.
Well, I think it depends on who you're talking to. Like Richard Thompson, for example, and Nick Lowe both Richard Thompson had bought a Hackberry Rambler record when he was a kid, and he started, and they did a song called Cajun Woman, and they were all into that young. And Nick Lowe, he's on Evangeline Maid, and he wanted to do that Don't Stop the Music, and he wanted to do the real thing with Steve Riley. I think he'd run into Steve somewhere, maybe. But I don't think I think they're smart people. John Fogerty, he called me up and said he had my book. He's like, I have your book, Ann. I want to do a song like Irie Lejeune. I mean, this is John Fogerty. You know, it's like, it's crazy how these guys love the real thing.
I think that, going back to your question about does it change, does people's idea of what they need to do change when they're around other people, famous people are out of town? I don't know, but I always go back to like Mayus Lafleur, who made the second Cajun recording back in the 20s, and Cleoma, and they're all of a sudden they're out way far from Louisiana, in New York and Atlanta and all these people, and Mayus Lafleur was hanging out with Jimmy Rogers, and you gotta think, if you're hanging out with Jimmy Rogers, or if like you're in New York, you gotta think, well, I'm gonna do what I gotta do, but at the same time, I want these people to like it. I'm like with these record executives, so I'm gonna do whatever I can to make my music understandable and, feelable by them, even if it's not in their language. And I think that, anytime an artist is exposed to a greater world around them, they want to be able to connect with that world. And I think it does influence, even if it's just like energetically, it influences their performance and possibly their writing and creativity. I always actually have thought about that a lot, like how much did Cajun music change when these artists had the opportunity to record next to these famous bands at the time.
That's a good point. And the opposite of that too, they'd listen to the radio and hear like a jazz song, like Cleoma.
Definitely.
She brought all these jazz songs into Cajun music in the 30s.
Yeah, she was doing what she felt was
she liked it.
Popular and good.
Yeah. They had to make a living. They didn't just play Cajun music to be authentic. That was the last thing they were doing, They were trying to make some money for their families.
They were being experimental and punk rocker back in the day, and that caught on, and we call it traditional now.
Yeah.
But, it was new.
Yeah, and you've written about this, right? I mean, you've been compiling and archiving this stuff. And so tell us about the second volume that you're working on of your work. And I mean, I'm curious, generally, like, has this experience given you some other insights into the tradition that you didn't previously have?
No, because what it is, it's just more of my fanaticism, the same. It's all, I stop at about 1950 with the artists that are in the book. It's like I like the old music, so I'm just doing the next people that wouldn't fit into this 500-page book.
Yeah.
So it's the next 500 pages about the older artists.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that I'm like telling the new story.
Oh, it stops at 1950 going
something
backwards.
Yeah,
and then it's
backwards.
50
Backwards,
before.
thank
Okay.
you, for clarifying that. And, I think that the younger people are a lot of educated young people, and these people couldn't read and write, many of them that I'm writing about, so I think I'll tell their story for them. Mm-hmm. And also their experiences are not like anything anybody today would have, and I think that's why I choose the older stuff, because their stories are about a time that's gone now and a world that's gone, and that's what intrigues me.
Do you feel like having been able to sort of come from a different culture maybe and then experience this has given you a different insight into that history, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that I come in looking at it as a brand new magical fairyland, whereas the people that have lived in it all their lives, many people that live here, as we all know, look down on Cajun music. It's been very stigmatized, and it still is today. Don't think it isn't. And so the ones that, it's a rough world out there, and there was a lot of negativity involved to any connection with Cajun-ism or speaking the French language.
So you find that Cajun music is still stigmatized here?
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
For example, a lot of people want to pretend like they don't know French, even if they do, or, because it's considered to be less of a high society thing to be Cajun in many, many instances. I mean, everybody knows that around here. They might not admit it, but, if you might, in Lafayette, it's very cool to be Cajun, and some of the people they understand that it's cool to be Cajun now, but was not so 10 years ago, 20 years ago. People used to pretend like they couldn't speak French, even if they could,
Let's take a break from this conversation and go a little bit of a different direction. So this is a segment of the show we call the checklist. And what I have is a random assortment of questions, 25 of them. And I'm going to ask each of you to pick a number, and then I'm going to ask you that question. It'll tell us something very revealing. It's very scary. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So, Louis, pick a number between 1 and 25, and we'll ask you...
13.
13, all right. What's the best day you ever had at work?
A lot of good days at work. I love working.
So you got a lot to choose from. Yeah.
Yeah, the best. I mean, I don't know. It's like I really enjoy working, and you know, sometimes I curse myself for booking too many gigs in one day, but at the same time, I love it. Like we've had a few times where we've done like 5 gigs in 24 hours, and just ridiculous amounts of play. And and even though sometimes you're extremely fatigued, you're like, why are we doing this? And you're just trying to get from, and you're like fifth gig in 24 hours, you're still doing it, and it's just it's such a joy and such a rush, even if you're beating yourself to death by playing too much music. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just so much good, so much ups and downs with playing music is the thing. So you got to really appreciate the times, because sometimes you can spend 48 hours to get on stage to play for 1 hour, or you can spend a lot more time to get on stage to play for less. So I don't know, a lot of good days at work.
So you're still good with like loading the van?
Man, I couldn't imagine someone else setting up my stuff unless I needed them to. Like, hey, I got another gig and I have to rush over. Can you please set up my pedals? But otherwise, yeah, I couldn't imagine like having a roadie, or I love loading up the van.
May I feel your forehead?
I do.
Yeah, that's good. That's honorable. Ann, can you pick a number between 1 and 25?
4.
4. Okay. What really drives your work?
Oh my gosh, that's a huge question. I'm very, very driven in general in life. I think that I'm fascinated by so many things, and I have so many things I want to accomplish. I think love drives my work. Love and what I love and getting it out and sharing it. And so that's why I go crazy working all the time. I want to just give everybody everything I know and want to share. That's what drives me.
So besides the book, I mean, what else are you working on these days?
I just made a lullaby CD and it's a book with all the guitar chords and songs that you can sing along with your baby, and that's our latest project. I'm working on volume 2. I'm working on a solo record, and those are the 3 things I'm making myself finish this year. I've got to finish those, my solo record and my volume 2.
I mean, it just seems like to have that level of productivity, you know, I mean, is it just because you're so driven by your love of what you do, or is it the sense that like, well, if I'm not doing this, I'm not getting paid? I mean,
I don't get paid for anything I do.
They're labor of love.
It's totally labor of love. I mean, I might make a little bit of money, but fortunately I didn't support myself with all of this labors of love. And I think I'm kind of love to be out in the middle of nowhere, meditating, contemplating, doing projects, writing in journals, taking photographs. You know, just that's the person I am. Yeah. I'm not particularly a person who goes out partying. You know, I might go out every now and then, but I'm a person who likes to stay home and express myself through whatever I can do.
Yeah. So Louis, you guys, and by you guys I mean Lost Bayou Ramblers, right? I mean, 20 years, right?
20 years, yeah.
And I think there was a hot minute where you guys were going to take a little bit of a hiatus.
Yeah, we took a small hiatus. We just decided it would be fun to try something different, and it was really just not performing live for 5 months. And we recorded a soundtrack and then 2 soundtracks actually to our own documentary and to the Lost Bayou film. So we were plenty busy during the hiatus, but we just wanted to try. We had been booking it for a long time, and let's just try taking a little break. It's funny because the public, of course, we just felt like we had to put out a statement too, like, hey, we're not going to be playing for a little bit. But people took it as, y'all breaking up, y'all hate each other. Y'all are quitting, and whatever. And then we won the Grammy right after we announced the hiatus. And then, so people make other things of that, but really, we just wanted to take a break. We still did take the break after the Grammy. Managers, hey, you want to come be on our roster and go tour the world? I mean, not really. We love playing in Acadiana and New Orleans, and we love touring when it makes sense, but we love being home, and we're lucky and fortunate to be able to play so much in Louisiana. That's I think a lot of the balance of playing traditional music and playing in family bands and having families and being musicians is the ability to have that balance. And as much as it's tempting to want to give your all to your career and all that, I mean, I've seen so many different musicians with so many different lifestyles. And, I think that Louisiana musicians in particular, whether it be New Orleans music or Cajun, Zydeco and all that, we're more of, self-makers, self-managers, self-bookers, and we're able, more so than like the pop music scene or the indie music scene, to have a more balanced life and not be like, you have to hit the road to make it and you have to play all these different markets. My philosophy is, if you want our music that much and you want to get us out there, we'll come play. Otherwise, we love playing Louisiana.
Sounds like you feel like you've got a really good work-life balance.
I think that's the goal, and I have, I've been doing it, like 20 years with this band and a bunch of other bands, and, I have 3 children and raised them solely on music for the last 8 years while my wife was off, and, I was pretty proud that she would even consider me, doing that for 8 years while she took a break to raise the children, and it worked out. It's just, you got to put yourself in it and jump off the cliff, as they say, and hopefully you're able to fly.
So, and I can imagine this has been the same for you and Mark. You guys have been able to raise your family primarily as musicians, right? And that's remarkable.
Yeah.
I don't know that there are a lot of places in the country where you can say, without being some mega famous musician, you're going to earn, and I'm not to say that we're all making a lot of money, but earn enough money to raise a family.
Well, I think that I was in a little bit of a different situation because Mark builds accordions, and he has a music store, my husband, Mark Savoie. And so that was our income. That was a steady, always, for the past, my whole life, income. And so we toured on the weekends, and that was a supplementary, just as traditionally, most of the Cajuns, Louis has a second job too. He has other things he does besides playing music, right?
Kind of.
And sort of like, it was just, supplemental, like Dewey Balfour was a bus driver, but he played on the weekends. It's not like Cajun musicians, for the most part, are professional musicians. There are not that many gigs that can support that many professional Cajun musicians. I think of Lost Bayou, Beau Soleil, Steve Riley, Pine Leaves. There's really not a lot. You can't really live. The world won't feed that many people. Let's put it that way. You got to really bust your butt to do what you did.
Yeah.
I know we never did that. We just did weekends always. Yeah.
And I guess in my head, and I apologize, in my head I was thinking of the accordion business as a piece of being able to do this, obviously, in music.
Absolutely. Oh yes, everything we do is connected to music. So
Yeah.
yes, in that way, Cajun music has totally supported everything we've ever done. True. Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, it's music. It's whether you're like my brother builds accordions and plays music. I have multiple other bands.
Yeah, that's the only way to do it, right?
Yeah. The music business is a hustle. It's difficult to find staying power, and that's true of any industry, really. But following the family tradition of music is a way of sticking with what works, roots firmly planted in the ground, passing on a way of preserving and even growing cultural wealth to successive generations. Ann and Louis, it's been great talking with you both.
Thanks so much, Christiaan. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for lunch.
Yeah.
My guests on Out to Lunch today have been singer Ann Savoie of the Magnolia Sisters and Savoie Family Band and Louis Michot of Lost Bayou Ramblers and Nouveau Electric Records. We edited this show to fit into the time slot here on KRVS. You can hear our unedited conversation and find out more about Ann and Louis by listening to the Out to Lunch Acadiana podcast. And you can find and subscribe to the Out to Lunch Acadiana podcast anywhere you get podcasts and on our website. It's acadiana.com. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Morrell. Our associate producer is Molly Richard. Our researchers are Ann Christiaan and Maggie Mendel. Today's show is engineered by Kieran McIntosh. I'm Christiaan Mader, editor of The Current, Lafayette's community-owned nonprofit newsroom. Thanks for joining me. For more great stories and conversation, check out thecurrentla.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. I'll see you again here next week around the lunch table for more business, Acadiana style, on Out to Lunch Acadiana. Bye-bye.
Out to Lunch Acadiana is recorded live over lunch at the French Press in downtown Lafayette. Since 2009, the French Press has been serving Cajun brunch and providing custom catering for uniquely personalized events. The French Press is open 7 days a week till 2 p.m. with dishes like Cajun Eggs Benedict and Sweet Baby Breezes. The Out to Lunch Acadiana theme music, Encore Monsieur Nice Guy, is written by Mitchell Foreman and performed by Mitchell Foreman and Andre Michot. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Shorten Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. Support for Out to Lunch Acadiana comes from the Wyndham Garden Lafayette, located off Pinhook near Khalees Saloom. Wyndham Garden Lafayette is a pet and family-friendly hotel with reception space for large and intimate events, free parking, free Wi-Fi, and a free shuttle within 3 miles that includes the airport and downtown restaurants.